Okay, I want to show you how to sew a zipper into a loom knitted garment, but this would probably work about the same for even a knitted garment, a needle knitted, or crochet. So, what I have here is I have gone in and steamed or pressed, and I used a cheaper yarn here, and if you ever want to soften a cheap yarn and its drape, press it. Alright, steam it and press it, and what it does is it thins it out and it softens it, okay, and it improves the drape dramatically. And when it comes to sewing it in a zipper, which this is a separatable zipper, you want to use this, okay. So what I like to do is, typically you would pin in a zipper, but you're working with a knitted garment, and particularly if it's got a wider gauge to it, you're going to want to use safety pins, and I have a box full here. So what I like to do, this is a separatable zipper, which is great, but I have also worked with non-separatable zippers. But typically, I like to start at the bottom of the garment. Alright, and what you want to do is you want to put as close to the bottom edge as possible, okay, and when you find that about the level you want it, safety pin it in. Now, here's the thing. You're going to sew this as close to those teeth without sewing onto the teeth so that you can zip it up and down, but the zipper doesn't show that much. Okay, so that is your goal. My suggestion is safety pin the one side first, then go back and safety pin the other side. If you want to try to do it at the same time, you are more than welcome to do this. This is kind of do it as your preference. If you think this is going to be too much trouble to try to do it separately, line the other side up as close as possible. Alright, I've got a rib stitching here, so that looks to be about right on the line up. Alright, so what you want to do is safety pin that in as close to the teeth as possible, without putting it onto the teeth. Alright, and so you're going to do that all the way up. Now, normally we end up using a crafter's thread or something like that. Now, I don't ever press my rib stitch. It loses that nice spring. So if you decide to press something like this, which is part of another video, don't press your rib stitch. It'll lose its spring. Okay, so I'm going to pin this into the next section, and I have a chain that I've developed here. What you'll want to do is you'll want to take that top side of that chain and be your section that you're sewing in. Okay. Alright. So take your other side, line it up, and pin it in. Okay. And you're going to do this all the way up. Line it up just on the edge of the teeth and pin it in. Do this all the way up to the top. Okay. So, go ahead, pause the video, pin your zipper in all the way to the top. Okay, so as you can see, I have it pinned all the way from the top to the bottom. Now, a few things to keep in mind. Make sure that you can slide your hand all the way up to the top, because you don't want to have your back connected while you're trying to sew this. Alright, make sure that when you're pinning, you aren't yanking or pulling on it. If you do that, then you will get a wave or a bubble in your zipper. So what you want to do is lay it flat, and you shouldn't see any bubble. Okay. Now, if you're doing a separating zipper, or even if you're not, this is what you want to do next. Unzip it. But when you pin it, you have to have it zipped up. When you go to sew it in, you can unzip it. Okay. So, it's unzipped. Now I have access to both sides. When you are sewing on, do not yank or pull on the yarn. Okay. You're going to sew it right up the edge. And I was able to unzip it beautifully. Alright. I can tell you, you aren't going to be using a crafter's needle on this one. You're going to use actual needle and thread. I've already got my needle and thread. And I've already done my little knot at the end. Okay. And I'm going to start that knotted section on the back of the zipper. Now I'm trying to do this in camera. Okay. Let's see if I can do this right now. Okay. So we've undone our zipper, and now we're ready to sew it in. So we have it as close to the edge as we can. Alright, so what I'm doing now, you'll likely have this hard spot. You may not can get into it. If you can't, do the best you can. Alright, so I'm going to have to work a little above it. Now, what you want to do, now that you've got your first thing in, is stick it through. Do not put it in between those teeth. Don't put it in between them teeth. If you do, the zipper will not function like you want it to. Alright, now you're going to send it through and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the outer edge of the chain, pull through, and then send it back through. Kind of like working a button. This is your closure. Take your time with it, alright? Don't rush it. Alright. And take that out. Just to keep it in place as you're working. Okay. So I'm going to go to my next chain, which is right there. Put the needle through. And then I'm going to send it through the chain. And then send it back through. And what that's going to do is going to get a nice flat edge, as you can see. Now what you may have to do to keep that down is you may need to glue that little area there, because you're not going to get a needle through there. You're not a sewing machine. So you may need to glue that little section right there down. Alright. But you want to find about where your next chain is, send the needle up through. Don't get it near them teeth, or it isn't going to zip like you want. In fact, there's a line right below those teeth. I don't know if you can see it. See that line right there? Don't go past that line when sewing it. That way, you know for sure that you're going to be able to zip it up. Okay? Send it through the next half of that chain, and then send it back through, just kind of like a button. Alright, and I've only done a few, and as you can see, that's nice and smooth connection. This is your closure. Take your time. Alright, that's important, to take your time with your closure. Your chains will give you your even stitching. Send it through that outer edge. pull it through, and then send it back through. It is important still to pin the zipper in. Okay, it is still important to pin the zipper in. Alright. Well, yes, you may be taking it out as you're working to that next section. Trust me, pin the zipper. Use safety pins because regular pins for sewing come out. Okay. And send it back through. There. Okay. And if you feel like you're starting to get a flow, you can probably send the needle through the loop and the zipper at the same time. And as you go, it starts off slow and it speeds up. Okay? Now, as you can see, you have that little section for the feeder to go into. Alright, and you want that. Okay? So, I'm continuing on, and you're going to do this on both sides. So you're going to go all the way up on one side, then you're going to go all the way up on the other. Now, if you're really dominant on one side, instead of starting on the bottom, you could start at the top. You've got it pinned in where you shouldn't be shifting too much. If it's shifting too much, then your bottom will become uneven. But if you pinned it right, you should be able to start at the top and work your way to the bottom on the other side. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you can start with the bottom and work your way to the top. Alright? It's best to start at the bottom and work your way to the top so that you end up fairly even. Or you can start at the top and work your way to the bottom. Just start from the same side if you can. If you are having issues with dominance, then you can continue with the way you've been going. Okay? So, pause the video and get that much done, and I will show you what it looks like when you're done sewing up the zipper. Okay, once you get to the next section, take the pin out and work up those chains off of that. When you're done, you should have the zipper put in, alright? But, as you can see, there's what I have sewn in. Nice and neat, okay? The trick is to pin the zipper in. Notes: do not pin the back in while you're doing it. Make sure that you only are pinning the front and the zipper in. Do not stretch. Do not stretch while you're pinning it in. Just simply flatten it, pin it. That way you don't have a wave. That's what you'll get if you don't do it properly. Alright? Pin it. You have to pin it in. When sewing it, be aware of that line. You'll see it on the zipper. Do not go past it. That way your feeder can get past it without eating the yarn. Alright? Things to keep in mind. Okay? And you will have to use needle and thread. Alright? This is how you go about it. Alright? Keep those notes in mind and you'll be fine. Wherever you start, if you start at the top, start at the top. If you start at the bottom, start at the bottom. That way it's even on both sides. But if you can't, because you're particularly dominant and you need to go up one side and down the other, you can, but I would suggest bottom to top. Alright? That way you know no matter what, your zipper is going to end even at the top or at the bottom. But wherever you choose to start, start there every time and finish at the opposite end. Alright? So pause the video, get your zipper put in, and then I'll show you what it looks like finished. Okay, well, I've sewn in both sides of my zipper, and as you can see, I went in and added a little glue, hot glue, to the bottom of that so that it sticks, since you can't get the needle through, as you can see the stitching. Okay, and there is my zipper. As you can see, that wasn't hard to do. It'll unzip all the way down. Okay. There. See? And it'll zip all the way back up. Alright. Now, if you're working with one of those zippers that doesn't open at the bottom, when you're sewing it up, it's still just a good idea when you go to sew the other side to unzip it and then sew up the other side. Okay, and that just makes it easier. I've done both with no problems, but things to keep in mind: do not stretch the knit when you're pinning it to the zipper. Press it or steam it so that you have a nice smooth edge to work with, and you're not having to deal with such an extensive roll when it wants to do that. And start from the same end as much as possible when sewing up the zipper. Okay, but when you're pinning in the zipper, pin in the zipper with the zipper closed. Okay, things to keep in mind: pin it in with the zipper closed. Then when you go to sew it, you can separate it and sew it from the bottom up or the top down, but it's best to keep it consistent where it's either bottom both times or top both times. If you really can't do it, you can go and start at the top and work your way down, but I didn't have any problems with it. So, and I was still using my right hand on that sewing business. Okay, so that is how you put in a zipper.